Hello, and welcome to another episode of My Two Cent. My name is Paul Emerson, and I will be giving you my 2 cents. The title of this video is fairly simple. What is my problem? I've been dealing. Well, let me let me start over. I've been alive on this planet for going on 42 years now. I've been looking at the world and trying to be a functioning member of society all my life. I don't engage in illegal activities. I was an obedient child growing up. I follow rules, I follow regulations, I follow laws. I respect government. I understand that there's absolutely no way humans, especially like as a child, I kind of got it, and as an adult, I understand completely now. It is absolutely impossible for humans to function on any level of what we consider civilized without an active function of government and governance and verbal and written communication between us. That is the thing that us as animals have invented that allows us to escape our ecosystems. That's why we don't have to. That's why I'm sitting in this car and it's raining outside and I'm not wet, because that's what we have created, right? So the function of that, the way that all of that interacts and works, is complex in a way that is hard to distill down to its most basic form. But that's what this video is about, right? Because I'm intelligent, and I try really hard not to say that I'm more intelligent than the average person, but it has become very clear to me that I am far more intellectually superior than the people around me on a day-to-day basis. And my humility is the reason why I'm stuck sitting in this car in the rain at a bus at a car stop because of my belief in government and my understanding about the way rules and regulations work and the importance of it, and my ability to be obedient outside of myself and be obedient inside of myself. I set guidelines and standards for me that I hold myself to, and I have expectations for external entities, and they don't hold themselves accountable for their own external entities. They don't do what they're supposed to do outside of me. And I don't hold them accountable for their inaction. I don't go out of my way to say, well, if you would have did this, or if that wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't be dealing with the problem I'm dealing with. It's like, no, okay. Now that you have learned that this is the variable of this condition, you need to adjust yourself so that you won't have to associate yourself with that variable anymore. And when these variables pop up that are counterintuitive and counterproductive and out of alignment of what is expected, because we are beings that evaluate our reality so that we can make good decisions so that we won't get eaten by other beings. Like, that's the core foundation of what makes you a human being, right? You don't want to die. So every aspect of who you are is constantly probing the world and making sure that you're not going to die. Like, we are, if we were computers, we would have one program always running in the background saying, are you dead? No. Check if you're dead. You're not dead. That one prompt is constantly running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, making sure and ensuring that we are not either dead or in danger of dying. And it dominates and controls and influences every decision that we make and every action that we take. And it's a very primal understanding. That's where your fear comes from. That's not the fear itself. That's what manifests and generates the fear. So the inability to reconcile such a primitive part of who we are is the core conflict of reality. I don't have any fear is my problem. My biggest problem living in this planet is I don't have any fear. I'm not afraid of death. I'm not afraid of death. I'm not afraid of dying, and I have no desire to do either. I reconciled that as a very young child, which is the reason why I have to understand that my level of intelligence has to be higher than the average person, because at the age of 5 or 6, I had the thought experiment about, I wonder what death is like. I wonder what happens if you die. What's on the other side of death? And my adolescent brain was like, well, technically, no matter how long you live, you're going to just die. There's no way to live forever. You're not immortal. You can't live forever. So there's no need to even question or ponder or wonder about death, because it's going to come for you eventually. So why waste your life thinking about something that is inevitable anyway? Just continue to enjoy life. Life is fine. Just continue to play video games and hang out with your friends. You don't have to really think critically about what is the nature of something that no one's complaining about. Nobody that dies has ever came back and complained about death. Nobody that has ever claimed to have any understanding about the nature of reality, or no human being transcends death. None of us. Not a single one of us. And we spend every single second of our lives fighting against it. Every single second of our lives fighting against it. And that's just the weirdest thing to reconcile. And I say all of that because the problem that I have in my life is a lack of people willing to understand the core principles of reality. We all have a right to function in this world. All of us. Immigration, we need to close our border. For what? What gives you the right? What gives you more of a right to be alive than the next person? What gives me the right to exist on this planet more than the next person? What gives me as an American more of a right to exist on this planet more than another member of another nation? If you can answer that question, then I will understand why we have borders. The core conflict of this world is we all have the right to exist and function in a state of as close to equality as we can get. There is a dynamic between the finite and the infinite that we can't reconcile as individual human beings. And it is through government that we are supposed to be able to address that issue. I have the same amount of right to be alive as anybody else. And if you try to justify it outside of that, you're full of shit. There's no need for Donald Trump and Elon Musk to get on the air and say, immigrants, you know what my biggest problem as an American is? See, one of the cool things about being an American, and I will give it to the country for this, I can say what the fuck I want to say. And I can communicate how I feel and what I'm thinking and be rational and recognize the reality of the world that I'm living in without repercussion or consequence. There's not going to be any police officers pulling up on me and telling me that I need to keep my mouth shut and be quiet and silent so that they can continue to govern from a sense of fear-mongering and hatred and coerce, just evil, right? That doesn't happen here. But here's the balance of that. When we say shit, nobody fucking cares. Here's the balance. You have the right and the freedom to say whatever you want. Now nobody's going to care about what you have to say. Now you can just get on the internet and talk to the whole planet and run your fucking mouth and communicate all of the absolute truths of the world, and no one's going to care. No one's going to have half a second to recognize what you're saying with any level of intelligence and understand what is being communicated to them and actually give a care. No one's going to do that. And that's the most frustrating thing about being an American. When Americans say, and I said all of that for a very simple reason, when Americans say we need to strengthen our borders because of immigration. There is not a single person in this country that belongs here. The vast majority of people that live in this country that represent the United States of America are not natives of this land. They're not natives of this land. You have Palestinians and Israelites trying to go to nuclear war over which God told them they have the right to be where they have always been on this planet. And you got a bunch of people in America that don't look like the natives that live here saying we need to strengthen our borders and make sure the southern people of this continent don't come back to where they belong. You make that make sense to me. South Americans are more American than North Americans. The people that have been placed on this continent that traveled from Europe and Spain and China and Jamaica and Australia and in Africa, all of those other nations that have come here and set up camp to create satellite governments on this territory don't have the right politically to say anything about immigration when they are not natives to this land. They wasn't invited. The indigenous Native Americans that was here before Christopher Columbus got here did not invite them over and did not give them their consent to take ownership of their land, nor did they have the right themselves to give away their territories for their future generations to foreigners. Because, like I said before, we created policies, laws, legislation, governance. We created ordinances. We created rules and principles and guiding ideologies, axioms and postulates that we're supposed to use to govern ourselves. And when you take basic axioms and you ignore them at their fundamental, that's the problem of the world. That's the problem of the world. What gives you the right as a government to say we need to strengthen our borders and we need to stop immigration? We have to stop these people from coming into the country when you're illegally here. What defines the legality of Europeans being present in the United States of America? What defines the legality of Europeans being present in Canada? Those territories are North America. The continents of America are continents. They're not political boundaries. They're physical, geological structures that have existed here. And you think that it's okay for the United States to provide protection for animals, but they don't have to worry about the individual prosperity of us as human beings on this planet. Why am I living in my car as an honest, decent, providing person of this country? Why am I living in this car? Because somebody's not going to make money if they provide me with the money that they're keeping from me. The money that's being hoarded by like these giant corporations that's not trickling down to the poor. If I had money that I could spend, then the people around me would benefit from me spending that money, and then they would have money that they could spend, and then the people around them could benefit from that money. And that's basic commerce and basic economics. But that's not what's happening. The government is not regulating corporations to ensure that individual Americans have the rights that we need to be able to function at a functional level. They don't care if you're dysfunctional. They don't care if 1 or 2% slips through the margins when there's millions of us. When there's millions of us, 1% is important. Right? That's a very important number. I think it's like 10,000. Let me ask ChatGPT. I think 1% of a million is like 10,000. 1% of 1 million is 10,000. 10,000. 10,000 people can fall through the cracks of a policy if it's 99.9, if it's 99% efficient. 10,000 people won't function. What about 90%? What is 10%? Ten percent of 1 million is 100,000. 100,000. 100,000. Now, what is 1% of 20 billion, which is about roughly the average size of the global population right now? 200 million. 200 million. 1% of inefficiency is 200 million. That is a small nation. So when you're looking around in your society and you're seeing the problems that we're having, that's the problem. The problem is the inefficiency of our world, compounded by the illegal, immoral, and unethical actions taken. And if you can address the illegal, immoral, and unethical actions that are being taken and hold people to a higher standard of administration, you can raise those percentages. They do it all the time in their corporations, right? Like, they want to increase their bottom line by 1 or 2%. So they start cutting stuff and slashing stuff and come up with policies that's going to benefit them at the sacrifice of others. That doesn't make any sense, because the whole function of reality of society was to eliminate the adversities of living in nature. If we eliminate the adversities of living in nature, then why do we create so much unnecessary chaos and anarchy inside of our own societies, so that we can individually have, while the rest of the world is struggling and suffering? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. You look at anybody, not just me, but you look at anybody in the world and you're like, I don't understand why you're struggling. The problem that I have that nobody wants to understand is the vast majority of people in this world, the 100% that are struggling, are the ones that are honest. That's the problem that I have. I'm in my car because of my honesty, my integrity, my desire to be a functional human being, my desire to want to be good and behave and be honest and just, because the human mind can't reconcile all that bullshit. Like, you sit around all day and you think that, well, you're fucking stupid and dumb and retarded because you want to be honest. Look at me. I got all the... You are pretending to be happy. I have never met a dishonest person that was legitimately happy in my life. And I've been alive for 42 years. Dishonest people are constantly stuck in the state of having to cover up and hide their bullshit. And when they see somebody like me come around that's legitimately content with my reality and happy with my world, the first thing they think in their head is there must be something seriously wrong with this person for him to be content with life. What is he hiding? And you know how exhausting it is to constantly have to try to get people to understand that there's absolutely nothing fucking wrong with me, that I have not done anything wrong, and that there's nothing wrong with me, and that there's nothing that I need to fix about who I am. You just need to do your fucking part and let me be who I am. Just get out of my fucking way and let me function as a human being on this planet. That's all I need you to do. That's it. Why do I have to have people constantly mad at me and staring at... I have random ass strangers walking up on me like I did something to them because of religion. What the fuck is your problem with me when you've never even met me? 30 seconds of encountering me and you're automatically scared, terrified, ready to run away. Why? Because you watched the news for the last 10 years and they told you that the person that looks like me is your problem. We need to protect our borders from all these people coming in and doing what? And doing what? Trying to get the resources back from you. Trying to get the resources back from you. Why can't the average able-bodied man in this world function? We've been doing it for 100,000 years without technology. Why is it so hard for the average person on the planet to be able to just function? Why is it that you can see videos of the Philippines and they're standing on top of trash, but they're poor? Make that shit make sense. How did you afford the trash? How did you afford the water, the Coke bottles, the paper? How did you afford all of the stuff that you're living on top of, but you're poor? Why do poor people always have just enough to make somebody else rich, but not enough to maintain their own prosperity? Why? Why is it always possible for you to have just enough fucking money to be able to function just below adequate? Just below adequate. I've got just enough money not to be able to get an apartment. Why? Why is that okay? Why is it okay for everybody to get enough money to give to somebody else, but not enough money for them to just be okay with being alive on this planet? Why is that okay? Because that's the problem. The problem is that the United States wants to strengthen their fucking borders, but they don't want to help Mexico have a stable economy. Help the Mexican government have a stable economy so that its people would want to stay in their country and govern themselves. But you can't do that, can you? Because if you let Mexico become stable and govern themselves, then they're going to recognize that the problem that they have is you have all their fucking resources. The United States has too many fucking resources that they don't want to give to anyone so they can control the ideology of economics. We create false ass scarcity, which is the foundation of every adversity that exists in 2024. The idea that there are finite resources and that everybody can't have enough. Every night I work in fast food and I throw away perfectly good food that can be consumed and ate. I throw it in the trash every fucking night. I've been doing it all my life for the last 30 years. In the military, we would throw away thousands of pounds of food daily, probably millions of pounds of food daily. But 9 out of 10 people on this planet are starving. You know why? Because if you feed every fucking body, then the food has no value. And if the food doesn't have no value, you can't make a profit off of it. So it makes more sense economically to create scarcity. Scarcity provides you with income. And you don't need an income if you want to function as a normal person. You need an income if you need 3 jets. You need an income if you want to have 4 houses and have vacation spots. You also need to make sure the natives in that region are constantly begging and are constantly in a state of distress so that you can give them nickels and dimes to have a good time instead of paying them a value that they're worth. Everybody deserves honest, equal values for their labor on this planet. If you provide a service, you should be compensated for it. It should be that simple. You should be able to calculate. That's the reason why I started transitioning in my 2 cents. You should be able to calculate what it is that you need. And when you calculate what it is that you need, you should be able to manage the resources that you have to be able to provide for your needs. And if you recognize that your needs are more than what you're doing, then you should be able to say, I need to do more to get from where I am to where I'm trying to be. And the more I look at my finances, and the more I look at the reality of the world, and the more I try to pretend like institutional racism, bias, and prejudice toward African American men is not a factor, the more I see all the goddamn time exactly how fucked up it is that the system is designed the way that it is when you just want to be an honest person. When all you want to do is just function at the level of honesty. Why do I have to sacrifice my honesty to be prosperous? Why do I have to work twice as hard to do the same shit just because I want to be fucking honest? Why? Why? My entire military career was bullshit because I had to constantly defend my integrity. One of the Army values is fucking integrity. And because I wanted to have some, I got fucked over every fucking day in the Army. And then you look at me like, oh my God, he's exposing military secrets. No, it's not a fucking secret. It's the whole way the fucking world is ran. It's the way your household is ran. It's the way your cities are ran. It's the way your states are ran. It's the way that the federal government is ran. It's the reason why as soon as you see bullshit happening in the world, the first thing you say is, I wonder what really happened. Because you already know you don't entertain reality. You entertain your own bullshit. So when young 18 to 21-year-olds are transitioning out of being kids into trying to be functioning members of society, and they're like, yeah, I got to follow laws and obey rules. And the first thing you see is, nobody is obeying laws and following rules. No one is doing that. Why should I do it? You should do it because if you look at the world, you can see how fucked up it is because nobody's following the rules and the laws. Nobody's doing that. The problems of the world is the inability of us as human beings to maintain our own checks and balances. Elon Musk, a fucking foreigner, right? What did Donald Trump say? These foreigners are coming over to this country and taking our jobs. We have to strengthen our borders because these foreigners are coming over our country and taking our jobs. What's the first thing Donald Trump does? Puts Elon Musk in charge of the government to do what? Fire people. What is Elon Musk? Oh, Elon Musk is a natural born citizen because his grandparents were Americans. So by definition, he's an American. Okay, if he was born in South Africa, which is another country, but you're saying that he's an American because his parents were American. What about all the people that live on the fucking continent that are being told that they're not national? What about all of the South Americans and all of the Mexicans that used to be North Americans that got pushed down into Mexico by invading colonial European nations? What about them living on the fucking continent? But you want to put a border up to stop them from coming up here because they're desperately needing to provide for themselves. Elon Musk is a foreigner that has been put in a position over the United States government to cut and slash government jobs, specifically in the Department of overseeing regulations for corporations. Am I the only person on this fucking planet with a goddamn brain that can see what the fuck is about to happen? Government's primary function is to regulate corporations so that I don't have to sleep in my goddamn car. That's not what's fucking happening. Instead, Donald Trump said, we are going to make sure that foreigners don't steal our jobs. We elected him as the president of the fucking country. And the first thing he does is put a foreigner in position to take away jobs from Americans so that that foreigner can deregulate his industries to destroy the fucking planet, to make more fucking money for himself. And when I say there is a problem with racism in the country, institutional racism exists. There is an inequality between the African American and the Caucasian in America. There is a deconomization of the reality of the world and the way that infrastructure functions between whites and non-whites, and that there's a capitalistic system and there's a classism system that exists that is causing all of this adversity. The only thing you can see is that fucking nigger is living in his goddamn car because he's too incompetent to actually be able to function at any level. That's the only thing that you can recognize from all of that. And they're fucking coming for you. And I know I sound like the crazy dude standing on the corner right now, but they are. They're coming for you because I'm already learning how to live in my car. I'm already learning how to function underneath. Remember what I said? You take your resources and you see what you have to cut and you have to slash so that you can grow. Because you know what I'm starting to understand? I'm starting to understand that the problem that I'm having in this world right now is that I'm a fucking human being. That's my biggest problem, is that I'm a human being. And you know what I can do to change that? I can become a fucking corporation. And I bet you, when I become a corporation, I won't be living in my car anymore. I won't be struggling the way that I'm struggling. And I can continue to be an honest person because I have the proper business structure. I have the proper business structure. And when you guys come for me, the shit's already going to be on the fucking internet. It's already going to be here. Because I've already tried to get everyone to reconcile and recognize and rationalize what's happening. Nobody wants to fucking do the work. Everybody's too fucking lazy and too worried about themselves and too worried about right fucking now to do the long-term work that is necessary for humanity. For us as an actual species on this planet. The biggest problem in this world is not the fact that white people are being human. They can have grace for being fucking human. If you want to be a racist piece of shit because you can't get over your humanity, I can understand and respect that as another person on this goddamn planet. The problem is, you know fucking better. You know fucking better. And just because your parents aren't beating you with a fucking belt for doing stupid fucking shit anymore at the age of 25 and 30, you should still be able to beat your own self with a fucking belt. You should still be able to do that. You understand how pain feels. You understand how difficult life is. So you shouldn't be going out in the world actively making it harder for people that haven't done anything to you. And that's my grievance. That's my mission fucking statement for my 2 cents. I know how hard it is. And I'm not actively engaged in making it harder for other people. But I have to stand back and watch as other people make it hard for other fucking people. And it doesn't make any fucking sense. It makes zero fucking sense. As a rational person on this planet, I don't fucking stand. And then you tell me that because of my skin complexion, I'm a fucking retard. Okay, give me my fucking check. I accept the fact that I can't function at the level of everybody else. Give me my fucking disability check. You don't want to fucking pay me. You expect me to go out and function in the world like everybody else. So I do that every fucking day. Why is it so hard? Why is it so fucking difficult? Because of institutional fucking racism. That's the answer. Until somebody shows me something fucking different, that's the answer to that question. The reason why it's so hard in 2024 to be able to just provide for yourself, your wife, and your children with one fucking income and still have time to spend with them and nurture them and raise them is because of institutional fucking racism. Some shit that was invented by Europeans thousands of years ago when they recognized the economics of labor and the exchange of currency instead of a bartering system, and understood that the more money I make from someone else doing labor for me, and the more money I give to them for their labor, the less money I earn. Let me explain. I want to sell books, right? So I'm going to write these stories and sell these books. So when I sell a book, I get 100% of profit for it, right? Well, I have to physically do all the work to sell the book, to get the exchange of the money. If I give you books and say, sell these books for me, I'll give you some of the money. This is where institutional racism comes in. So pay fucking attention. This is how all this shit works. Classism, racism, inequality of the world, government regulations, like all of it. Right fucking now, I'm about to explain all of it in probably 10 minutes because I like to ramble. But I'm about to explain it in a way that you should be able to understand it if you just write this shit down and reread it later. I want to sell a book. I create the story. I write the story. I get the story put in a book. I sell the book. I did all the work. I make 100% profit, right? I go to another guy, age 42, African American male. Here, sell this book for me. I'll give you a percent of the profit. Okay, cool. He sells the books for me. What am I doing? Nothing. I'm not doing anything. He's selling the books. He comes back with the money. Here's the money. We made $100. I give him 50. I take 50. Right? My ego says, I'm the one that invented the book. Why should I give him half? Let me give him less than half. Right? How does he live off of less than half? How does he live off of less than half? Oh, he's only gonna give me half, and I need $100. So if I sold 2 books, he'd give me $100. So now I need to sell 4 books because I'm only getting 25. So now I have to. He's getting 75. I'm getting 25. So instead of selling 2 books to get $100, I need to sell 4 books to get $100. So that's what I'll do. And then since I can't get enough money from helping just him, let me help this other guy so that I can make up the difference. So he helps the other guy make up the difference. So guess what he does for me? Half the fucking work. Half the fucking work. Hey, I thought you were going to sell these books. Yeah, I did. I've made enough money for me. So I'm good. I'm straight now because I learned how to live off of less than what I can function. You forced me in a position to live off of less than what is functional. So I learned to live in dysfunction so I don't have to do anything at a functional level anymore. But look what just happened. The ground state of economy just dropped a little bit. Just a little bit, right? He used to be able to afford 10 apples. Now he can only afford 9. So what did he do? He learned how to live off of 9 apples. So now you need him to hustle for 10 apples. He don't need to. So guess what happened to you? Now you got to live off of 9 apples. And then he learns to live off of 8. Then you learn to live off of 8. Then he learns to live off of 7. Then you learn to live off of 7. And it just trickles down. And that's what corporations have been doing. They don't fucking care. They don't care. You know what the thing that's amazing is? $50,000 home used to be a $50,000 home. $1 million home used to be a $1 million home. Guess what used to happen? You used to have value in in a $1 million home. Your $1 million home used to have some value. It used to have some clout attached to it because I live in a $1 million home and you live in a $50,000 home. But guess what happened? The people living in a $50,000 home wanted a $1 million home. So what they do? They raised the rent of their $50,000 home to $60,000, then $70,000, then $80,000, then $90,000, then $100,000, $200, $300, $400, $500, $1 million. $50,000 home is now a $1 million home because the person that owned it wanted to have a $1 million home. And guess how much the $1 million home is? It's still a fucking $1 million. So now think about it. Now the $1 million of home value has dropped to $50,000 because the value of something is not relevant to what it's actually worth. The worth of a thing and the value of a thing are not the same. And that's just the reality of the way the world has always functioned and worked. All of the actions of our minds that we use to validate and govern the world, they are absolute truths. That's the reason why science exists. Science doesn't exist because we invented it. Science exists to reconcile the nature of reality with the conscious mind. Scientists just got tired of arguing with spiritual people and said, okay, well, you know what? Fuck it. It's a bias-free ideology. You can have your bias. I'm going to stick with my facts because facts are legitimately what the mind is looking for. That's the reason why I walk around with such clarity, because all of my axioms are built on principles that align with the reality of the world. I'm sleeping in my car because the reality of my world, if you want to be a good, honest person in this world, you're going to suffer for it. Was what I've always been taught. What you have to do in this life is love Jesus. All you have to do in this world is love fucking Jesus Christ. What ethnicity is Jesus Christ? Jesus Christ's race doesn't matter. But Jesus is a man. Yeah, he's a man. So his ethnicity matters. No, his ethnicity doesn't matter. Then if his ethnicity doesn't matter, it transcends humanity. He transcends humanity if his ethnicity doesn't matter. No, that's not how it works. Jesus is a man, but his ethnicity doesn't matter. Jesus is white. The Bible is a European story. Jesus is white. The Bible was written specifically to justify religion. The Bible was specifically written to justify governance of man. Humans don't need you. You can't govern me. If I can kill you, you can't govern me. If I can come to your house and murder you and take all your shit and you're dead and you can't say anything about it, then you can't govern me. That's the reason why we need regulations. That's why we need government. Because all I have to do, I don't need you have a fit. Remember the analogy of the 50,000, 100,000 house? All your fucking clout. You keep bragging about your fucking house. Guess what I do? I walk up to your house, punch you in the face, and take it. As long as I can overpower you for it, I can keep it. That's the way nature works. All I have to do is fight you. If I fight you and win, I win. You lose, I win. Simple. That's why we need government. That's the whole function of government. What is the justification of that? Jesus. Jesus is the referee. You got $1 million house, I got $1 million house. Jesus comes over and says that house belongs to him. This house belongs to you. I am the official arbitrator of reality. And then we come to some mutual understanding because our primal brains recognize the alpha in Jesus Christ. Like, that's what religion has done. It has conditioned our cognitive synapses at a young age to associate that imaginary entity as the primary provider, right? Because the primary provider should be your parents. And then because you have this, how no matter how big a cat is, if you grab it by the back of the neck, it shuts down and stops moving and it goes limp. That instinct that it has, that's the same thing that they use with the psychology of us when it comes to religion, to keep us in compliance with the reality of the world. And if you deviate from that just a little bit, they recognize that as your inability to function as a human being in society. But the reality is that your desire to take care of yourself will always exceed the needs and wants of someone else, right? So when you deviate from the status quo, you're not really deviating from the status quo. The status quo is just fucked up and they expect you to just be in compliance with bullshit. But they spent half of our lives teaching us be obedient. They want us to be obedient so that they can corrupt us into being too ashamed to admit our disobedience, if that makes sense. So that's the way that it works. So that's where the whole idea of Jesus being white comes in, because you don't want me to recognize my own authority. You want me to put my authority and my administration to someone else, right? So Europeans decided, hey, let's all just be kings and queens of the world. We don't have to be peasants. We don't have to suffer anymore. There's always going to be someone that's going to suffer. There's always going to not be enough resources. There's always going to not be enough to go around for everyone. Someone's going to have to go without. Since we know this to be an absolute truth of the reality of the world that we live in, because we exist before the Industrial Revolution and modernization and scientific principles, which is the most important part, we have to create a system of class that will always ensure that we will have prosperity. And our prosperity shall always be built upon the foundation of those that don't have the same quality of prosperity. That is the core foundation of the ideology of white versus black. And it is defined that way on top of Christ. The idea that Christ is the arbitrator of why there isn't equality. Christ stands in as the reason why you're suffering is because there's not enough for everyone, and one day you will get your turn. But in 2024, there is enough for everyone. There is enough for everyone. And Elon Musk is not going into the government with the ideology of there is enough abundance for the world. Let's figure out how to make sure that everyone has enough. He's going in there with the ideology of Europeans will always be on top. The elite of us will always be white. And every non-white person that is not European will be at the bottom. And we will hoard all the resources from them because it has been defined and decided that there will always be some that will have and there will always be some that will not have. And no matter how much you have, there's just never going to be enough for everyone. And the sad reality is that that's just simply not true. That's just simply not true. There is more than there. We live in an infinite resource with we live in an infinite reality with infinite resources, and we are finite beings. We don't need, like, you can calculate how much water the average human needs. It's not an infinite number. You can calculate the amount of calories that the average person will need throughout their entire life. It's not an infinite number. Finite resources is all we need. We need finite resource for finite. We need finite resource for finite people, and we know that they're finite. You know exactly, if you set healthcare to 60 years, from 60 to 40, you know exactly. You know roughly 100 years this person's going to be alive. If you have a census of exactly how many people are alive, if you know that there are, I'm gonna keep the number simple. If you know there's 100 people that are gonna live for 40 years and they need $10 a year, that's simple math. It's very simple math. As a government, that's really simple math. And if you understand that those people are going to pay into a system, right? You don't even have to tax the information. You don't even have to tax it. You know that these institutions should have exactly this amount of money from just that, right? Like, this is what I'm trying to say. If they gave housing to senior citizens, right, and they set it at a certain value, the government knows how much money they gave those senior citizens, and they know that that money was supposed to go to housing. So they know that the housing market, right, we're talking millions of, there are, every state across this entire country has seniors. So we're talking millions of individuals that could be being paid. Let's say they're getting paid a low income wage for low income housing, right? Let's say your apartment complex has 100 houses, and we put 20 seniors in your apartment complex, and the government gives those seniors money for rent. The government knows that those apartments are being housed by those seniors, and that there should be a certain amount of money that that apartment complex should be getting from those seniors living in that apartment complex, right? That's your subsidy. That's your fucking subsidy. That's how you subsidize the rent, so that when I need an apartment, I don't have to pay $1,500 making $5 an hour at McDonald's. Because there's your subsidy. What did those seniors do all their fucking life? They paid fucking taxes. So don't say it's my 20-year-old taxes that's going into their house so that they can live. No, it's their community of people that did that. They did that. There's not enough money for Social Security. We can't afford to take care of the old. You know why? Because you thought that they were gonna fucking die. You didn't do the math for them to live 100 years. You didn't do the math for that. You thought they were gonna fucking die. Your goal was to work them to fucking death. It's immoral and it's illegal, right? So instead of doing that, instead of like sitting down and realistically doing the math, because remember, a lot of this stuff is pre-industrial revolution. After everything, that's the hardest thing about understanding what I'm saying. Every conflict that we have right now is based on a system that predates industrial revolution. All of the adversities of the world that we deal with day to day, Palestinians and Afghanistanians, I'm sorry, the Israelis and the Palestinians, that shit predates industrial revolution. Pre-fucking dates it. All of it. All of the adversities and all of the conflicts and all of the strifes that are taking place at the political level in this country are old ass men, old ass white men specifically, that are gone and dead, that don't have anything to do, carry no fucking merit in our lives anymore. It's their fucking legacy. Putin and Ukraine are going to war because the USSR used to be a thing, and he wants to fix that, and it goes back further than that, and like, for fucking what? For fucking what? And none of it matters. None of that shit matters. None of it matters. You've got nuclear weapons. You have the power to tap into, harness, and extract energy from the nuclear atoms of, that's basically fucking magic, right? Like, we basically have magical technology, but you want to go to fucking war because you feel like your imaginary boundary should be bigger. But like I said, we don't really speak truth, and Putin understands that. NATO should have never went into Ukraine. There are enough government structures on this planet that could have helped the Ukrainians without it having to be the one fucking government that was designed specifically to attack, to literally attack. Let's be honest, right? The NATO alliance was designed specifically to justify full-scale war with Russia. The NATO alliance accomplished its objective to unify governments and oppose the spreading USSR threat. They accomplished their objective. Politically, they wanted to politically strengthen these smaller nations and countries so that Russia couldn't, through force and aggression, expand its boundaries, right? Then they went into the Ukraine. They went straight into Ukraine. Like, why are you're mad at Putin because he was expanding his fucking borders. So you created the USSR to stop him from expanding his borders. And in the process, you expanded the territories of the USSR. I mean, of the NATO alliance. You expanded it's an ally. I get it. It's an allied nation. But you're expanding the territory of an allegiance, right? And then you thought it was a good idea to take the one government structure that was designed to invade Russia and use that one fucking structure to make an alliance with Ukraine. Why? With all of the political bodies that exist on the planet, why did you think that was a good idea? And here's the other thing. Why did you stand in opposition to Putin peacefully working with the Ukrainians when they already have that relationship anyway? Why? Because they don't tell you the truth. They just tell you it sounds good. The NATO alliance was probably over in Ukraine. You know what? Let me go on a conspiracy rant real quick while I'm thinking about it. The Ukrainian government, if you remember during COVID, before COVID, there was massive suicide bombing and terrorist activity in the Middle East, right? If you remember, it started spreading to European countries. They started having suicide bombers in Paris and in London, I think even in Germany. And they didn't really know what to do because it's like we've spent this idea that suicide bombers are, and this goes back to the whole idea about borders too. We've been spinning this idea that suicide bombers are Middle Easterners, and we've radicalized the idea of these terrorists and how you have to go in and you have to invade and you have to destroy the entire country. So we have suicide bombers in Paris, but we can't invade Paris. So what happened? COVID hit, shut the world down. What happened after COVID? What happened during COVID? Russia and Ukraine went to war. The terrorists that were coming out of those European countries were hiding in Ukraine. The Ukrainian government couldn't deal with it, and they reached out to Russia and asked Russia to help them with that terrorist insurgent that was taking place in Ukraine. When Russia responded to help them with the terrorist actions, the rest of Europe was like, no, we can't let Russia do anything good. They're the fucking villains. Russia's the villain. We can't let the villain have a hero arc. So we have to maintain our warmongering and our fear tactics for the rest of the political world. If Russia goes into Ukraine and helps Ukraine, it looks bad. Like, why didn't anyone else go help Ukraine? Because Ukraine didn't ask anybody else. It's not a hard thing. Like, we're humans. I don't understand why Russia is over in Ukraine helping the Ukrainians with their terrorist issue. We are a people that govern based on governance, and Ukraine asked for help, and the person they asked help from was Russia. So we're letting Russia help Ukraine, and we're keeping an eye on Russia and making sure that Russia doesn't overstep its boundaries. That's how that was supposed to have happened. It's not what happened. It's not what happened. Because at the end of the day, even though people are going to burn and die and suffer, war is a political game. So the NATO alliance was like, we'll help you take care of this terrorist situation because it's affecting all of Europe anyway. So since we're already in an alliance with everyone, we can more effectively and quickly coordinate and organize ourselves to be able to address this issue inside of Ukraine faster and more effectively than Russia can. And maybe, just maybe, Russia will alliance itself with the NATO alliance. And Russia's like, no, I'm old. I have a legacy. I don't want to have nothing to do with you. You fucked up my country. All of the disparity of Russia is because of you. Like, you fucked up the nation. Like, we were living in a golden age and you destroyed it because of your politics. Like, why? Like, you're not even, why are you even over here doing any fucking thing? You completely destroyed my economy and my nation. And like I said at the very beginning of this rant, everybody on this planet has the right to prosperity and equality and basic human functions. Russians are human fucking beings before they are the USSR or the Soviets. They're fucking human. Just as human as the fucking Africans. Just as human as the Australians or the Asians or the Europeans or the Indians or the Native Americans of America. The Native, like, we are all just, at the end of the day, we're all fucking human and we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to do the same thing, and we're all failing at it because of our unwillingness to stop being afraid of our death. You're gonna fucking die one day. Stop being afraid of your own fucking death and start living and be nice and kind and respectful to the people around you. I'm not a fucking Christian. I don't believe in fucking Jesus. But that shit just makes sense to me. It just makes fundamental sense. And it doesn't in any way devalue or lower the standards of science and the scientific method. Observation, experimentation, and repeatability seems to be well in compliance with love thy neighbor, be kind, respectful, do unto others as you want to do unto yourself. Those types of values seem to fit into the structure of science. The problem with religion goes back to the idea of there's not enough resources for everyone. You want to get more than what you put in. And reciprocity doesn't work that way. People want to be blessed. They want to gain more from less. That comes from the ideology that I said about Christ. One day it will be your turn. We all have to suffer. There's not enough resources for everyone. One day there will be enough resources and you will get your opportunity. But right now you have to suffer because it's his turn to have more. It's her turn to have more. Your day is going to come. Right? That's the foundation that they used to build on. They built upon that foundation slavery and chattel property. That's the reason why they were like, let's just fucking make the American. Why even have this? Why play this game? We know how slavery in America is going to play out. We know what's going to happen. We're going to give them equal rights, and then we're going to wind up constantly having to go up and down in society. And I don't want to have to do that. I don't want my children to wind up being slaves. Well, the balance of life is that if your children become slaves, one day they'll have the same opportunity as the African to become free, and then y'all both can be free, and then there can be prosperity, because there's always going to be a class of slaves. There's never going to not be a class of slaves. Someone's going to have to do the work of the slave, and someone's going to have to be the administrator and the master over the slave. And it doesn't matter if the blacks do it or if the whites do. Well, it doesn't matter if the African does it or if the European does it or if the Frenchman does it or if the Russian man does it, because one of us has to do it. And then one of the genius white men was like, well, one of the genius European commoners was like, well, what if we just make the people that don't look like us do it? We could easily identify who's a slave and who's not if we just make the person that doesn't look like us the slave, and then we can just recognize that that guy's a slave. And they were looking at each other like, it makes sense to me. I don't want to be a fucking slave. That sounds like a great idea. Everybody that don't look like me can be a fucking slave, and everybody that looks like that dude right there with the dark skin and the big nose and the big lips and a curly beard, he could be the fucking slave forever. And then I could be his slave master forever, right? That's how this is going to work? Yeah, that's how this is going to work. And then guess what happens? All things being equal, you catch that fucking slave son with your daughter. And now you're like, what the fuck? Now how the fuck does this work? Didn't I tell you he was a slave? And she's like, yes. Like, yes, you told me he was a slave. That doesn't take away from the fact that I want him to have my children. Well, now you're going to give birth to slave children. And then the girl, the one, She's like, well, my children are going to be slaves. That's not how this is going to work. Any child that I have is not going to be a slave. And he's looking at her like, okay, so if they look like me and you look like me and they're born of you, then they're not slaves. Yes, that's how this is going to work. And then he's like, okay, I think I understand. I think that can work. But there's a problem with that situation. What about the one that has your body but looks like him? All of her children will be slaves. And he's like, okay, that's a problem. Because sometimes when you're not looking, I like to make children with her. And I don't really want my children to be slaves, but this was a great idea. Like, why did the idea not work the way it was supposed to work? This was supposed to be a clear-cut, easy peasy job. He said, you know what? What I'm going to do is I'm going to just leave it alone and let them sort that shit in the future. Like, if they come out looking dark, they're slaves. If they come out looking light, then they're not slaves. And then we got colored. Now the world is full of colored people. And you know what colored people are? The sad reality about the whole idea of the white and black issue, and people are too fucking stupid to just use common sense. Colored people are all fucking slaves. They're all just higher levels of administration under the class of slaves. If you're super dark, then you're a fucking worker. And if you're super light, then you get to function around the whites, the actual whites, because if they breed with you, there's going to be a less decolonization of their children. So it's much easier for the house slave to be a light-skinned African American. Well, a light-skinned African. It's easy to say African American, but it's much easier for the house Negro to be a light-skinned African, because if the slave master has sex with him, he can take the child and give the child to his wife and say, raise this child like it's your own. And she's gonna know, because it's obviously not her child, but she'll go with it because they don't have to work in the plantations and they don't want their children to have to suffer. And that is the core foundation of the adversities of the world and the issues that I want to address on YouTube, but I can't get around all of the algorithms and all the other bullshit. So if you watch this video, put your comments and questions in the bottom of this video. If you want to explore this and figure out how we can... My 2 cents is about fixing the fucking world. I created a calendar and a ruler to fix the fucking world. I'm so sick and tired of this bullshit. And because I am an honest person, I'm not going to build weapons of mass destruction and go out and blow shit up. But I also am intelligent enough to know that becoming a politician and going into the political office isn't going to change anything in it either, because that's fucking dumb. The people that have all the control right now are corporations. Corporations are running the fucking world. So if you're watching this and you're listening to me, no matter where you are, remember, corporations are running the world, not governments. Governments no longer have any authority, and they no longer have any control over the people, because corporations have usurped power from our governments to control themselves. Because at the end of the day, governments are ran by who? Individual peoples with finite lives and finite desires. And when you are a multi-billion-dollar corporation, you can provide any desire any corrupt politician has to get what you want. And I'm going to say this one more time, because sometimes people watch the end of the video. The beginning of the video and the end of the video are the only 2 things that people watch. Elon Musk is an immigrant. Donald Trump said that he's closing the borders so that immigrants wouldn't come here and take our jobs. And the first thing that Donald Trump did as the president of the United States was elect an immigrant to take your fucking jobs. I can rant for another hour, but I'm not going to. As always, my name is Paul Amerson, and I have given you my 2 cents.